Ruth Davidson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister when he will next meet the Prime Minister.
First Minister.
I have no immediate plans to meet the Prime Minister, having met him last week.
Ruth Davidson.
Thank you very much. On Thursday of last week, the Deputy First Minister was caught out on a radio programme suggesting that the OECD endorsed a claim that an independent Scotland would be the 6th richest country by GDP within that group. Numbers that the First Minister has used himself in this chamber. Can the First Minister confirm that these statistics are not in fact endorsed by the OECD and are not official?
First Minister.
They are government statistics which we have placed in the library of the Scottish Parliament. The OECD rankings are the number of countries in the Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development. And yes, an independent Scotland, in terms of gross domestic product per head, would be 6th in the Organisation of Economic Development, OECD. Therefore, it does tend to support the previous comments from Ruth Davidson from last year, when she acknowledged that an independent Scotland would be big enough and rich enough to be an independent country, in Brian Taylor's big debate in May of last year. But before she starts to talk about other people being caught out on the radio, I think we should examine the record of Ruth Davidson's remarkable interview in Newsnight Scotland, when faced with the difficulty of trying to reconcile Lord Forsyth and David Cameron's views on Scotland and the Constitution. She had a just remarkable formulation that she agreed with them both simultaneously.
Ruth Davidson.
Thank you. Well, the Prime Minister agrees with me. First we settle separation, then we discuss devolution. On the issue that I actually raised for the First Minister, on Friday afternoon, the First Minister's adviser was hastily scrabbling around this Parliament's press tower, handing out a 12-line document, this 12-line document, supporting the claims on the OECD. From this, we can see that the estimates of Scotland's GDP were drawn from the experimental Scottish National Accounting Project, SNAP. We find the figures on which the First Minister relies contained on the Scottish Government website under the heading of Data Being Developed, with the cautionary warnings that the statistics are not deemed fit for general use. They do not meet the rigorous quality standards of national statistics. They, I quote, are not official, and my own personal favourite, should not be the subject of media releases. The First Minister needs to stop presenting his assertions as fact and manipulating the data to suit his narrow purpose. So can I ask, did the First Minister authorise the release of information based on these figures to the media? And if he is prepared to be so slippery on this issue, how can anybody have any faith in anything he ever says?
Yes, I did, and yes, I will gladly republish the information on spice. It's really quite a simple calculation. What you do is take the gross domestic product of Scotland, and then you take the bit that's excluded from the UK government figures. That is our geographic share of oil and gas production from the North Sea. Now, you may say, why should we put in the oil and gas production from the North Sea? Because miraculously, that appears in the UK government's figures. It's only excluded from the Scottish figures allocated by the UK government, because some time ago, if she cares to read Alec Kemp's magnificent history on the oil and gas, the official history of oil and gas, she'll find that back in the 1960s, a UK Chancellor decided to create another country in these islands. It was called the Offshore Continental Shelf, and it was created as a device so that the oil and gas industry could be extracted from the figures of Scotland. Yes, and we know from the leaks that have come out, at that time, successive governments were being told that an independent Scotland would be richer than Switzerland, while Labour and Tory politicians were telling us we'd be poorer than Bangladesh. So I think that Ruth Davidson's in very shaky ground trying to defend the exclusion of the oil and gas industry from Scottish statistics. But before we finally move off that remarkable interview in Newsnight, Ruth Davidson has just said we'll talk about devolution after independence. What happened to the line in the sand? What happened to the line in the sand by which she beat Murdo Fraser in the Tory leadership contest. So what the Chamber must know, now that she's safely been elected in that narrow section of the community called the Conservative Party, now she's safely elected, is she going to follow the policy of Murdo Fraser, who she beat, or Lord Forsyth, who she phones up?
Christine Graham.